The night sky looked perfectly normal when Dr. Lisa Martinez finished her coffee and walked back to the radio telescope. She had been working at the Space Research Center in New Mexico for 12 years, and most nights were quiet. She listened to signals from distant stars, hoping to find something interesting among all the cosmic noise. But this Tuesday night was different. At exactly 2:30 in the morning, her computer started beeping like crazy. The signal was unlike anything she had ever seen before. It wasn't random space noise or interference from Earth. This signal had patterns. Like someone was trying to send a message using math. Lisa's hand shook as she recorded everything. The signal was coming from a star system 369 light-years away. That was impossible because radio waves would take 369 years to travel that distance. Yet here it was, reaching Earth in real time. She spent 3 days checking and double-checking her equipment. Everything was working perfectly. The signal was real, and it was definitely artificial. Someone or something was trying to communicate with Earth, using technology far beyond human understanding. While Lisa was trying to make sense of the mysterious transmission, something extraordinary happened 2,000 miles away in the mountains of Colorado. Two friends, Mike and Jenny, were camping near a quiet lake when they saw a bright light streak across the sky. At first, they thought it was a shooting star, but instead of disappearing, the light slowed down and landed somewhere in the forest, below their campsite. The next morning, they decided to investigate. After hiking for 2 hours, they found something that changed everything. In a small clearing, there was a silver pod about the size of a small car. It looked like it was made from metal that didn't exist on Earth. The surface was smooth and reflected light in strange ways. Mike wanted to call the authorities immediately, but before he could grab his phone, the pod started opening. A door appeared where there hadn't been one before, and steam hissed out from inside. Then she stepped out. The girl looked human, but something was different about her. She appeared to be in her early 20s, with long dark hair and skin so pale it almost seemed to glow. But it was her eyes that made them both step backward. They were silver, like mirrors, and when light hit them, they sparkled like stars. She wasn't wearing a space suit or any protective gear. Instead, she had on simple clothes that looked like they were made from fabric that shimmered when she moved. She walked toward them slowly, holding up her hands to show she meant no harm. "Please do not be afraid," she said in perfect English, though her voice had a musical quality that made it sound like she was singing. "My name is Kira. I have traveled very far to reach your world, and I need your help." Mike and Jenny looked at each other in shock. This was definitely not what they had expected to find on their camping trip. "You're from space?" Jenny whispered, barely able to believe what she was seeing. Kira nodded. "I am from a planet that orbits a star you call Kepler 442. My people have been watching Earth for a long time. We know about your cities, your technology, and your dreams of exploring the stars." She paused and looked sad. "But I am here because your world is in terrible danger. And almost no one will believe me when I tell them the truth." Before Mike or Jenny could ask more questions, they heard helicopters in the distance. Someone had seen the bright light the night before and reported it to the military. Within minutes, the forest was surrounded by soldiers. Kira didn't try to run or fight. She simply walked toward the soldiers with her hands visible, speaking calmly. "I surrender myself to your authorities. I have an urgent message for the people who study the stars. Time is running short, and I need to speak with someone who will understand." The soldiers were confused but professional. They had never encountered anything like this before. The girl looked human, but her spaceship and the way her eyes reflected light suggested she was telling the truth about being from another world. They took her to a secure facility in Nevada, where government scientists and military officials tried to figure out what to do next. Kira remained calm and cooperative, answering their questions but always returning to the same request. She needed to speak with astronomers who could understand her warning. That's when someone remembered Dr. Lisa Martinez and her strange signal from space. When Lisa received the call asking her to come to Nevada immediately, she thought it was a joke. But when she arrived at the facility and met Kira face to face, everything clicked into place. The signal Lisa had detected came from the same star system Kira claimed as her home. The timing matched perfectly with Kira's arrival on Earth. This wasn't a coincidence. During their first meeting, Kira explained that her journey had taken several months using technology that bent space and time. Her people could travel faster than light by creating shortcuts through dimensions that humans hadn't discovered yet. Your radio astronomer detected my ship's communication system, Kira told Lisa. We sent quantum entangled messages to let our people know we had arrived safely. But we also hoped that someone on Earth might notice and realize we were trying to make contact. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Why are you here? What's so urgent that you risk traveling across the galaxy? Kira's silver eyes grew darker. Because in 18 months, if nothing changes, your entire civilization will be destroyed. And the attack will look like a natural disaster that no one could have prevented. The room fell silent. Even the government officials who had been skeptical suddenly paid attention. There's a group of advanced civilizations that eliminates younger species before they can become a threat, Kira continued. They have been doing this for millions of years, and Earth is their next target. They have already planted the weapons that will destroy your world. Lisa's mind raced. What kind of weapons? They use your own sun against you, Kira explained. Tiny devices, smaller than atoms, have been placed in your star's core. When activated, they will cause solar storms so powerful that every electronic device on Earth will be destroyed. Your power grids will fail, your satellites will burn up, and your atmosphere will be stripped away. She looked directly at Lisa. Your people will think it's just a natural solar event, the kind that happens to stars sometimes. No one will ever know that your extinction was planned and executed by beings from other worlds. The government officials exchanged worried glances. This sounded like science fiction, but the girl's knowledge of physics and astronomy was incredibly advanced. She could answer questions about space and stellar mechanics that even their best scientists couldn't fully understand. Over the next few weeks, they ran every test they could think of. Medical exams showed that while Kira appeared mostly human, her DNA had sequences that didn't exist on Earth. Her bone density was different, adapted for a world with stronger gravity. Her blood contained elements that weren't found in Earth's periodic table. But the most convincing evidence was her knowledge. She could predict solar activity with perfect accuracy, describe the internal structure of distant stars, and explain cosmic phenomena that human science was only beginning to discover. Still, most of the officials remained skeptical. The idea that aliens were planning to destroy Earth seemed too incredible to believe. They decided that Kira was either an elaborate hoax or a disturbed person with remarkable knowledge of astronomy. Only Dr. Lisa Martinez believed her completely, and as the weeks passed, Lisa began to notice that Kira's predictions about solar activity were coming true with frightening accuracy. Something was definitely wrong with the sun, and if Kira was right, humanity was running out of time to save itself. The question was, would anyone else believe them before it was too late? 3 weeks after Kira's arrival, Dr. Lisa Martinez sat in a cold metal chair across from the alien girl. In a secure government facility, the walls were bare concrete, and everything smelled like disinfectant. 2 guards stood by the door, and cameras recorded their every word. Kira looked tired. The bright fluorescent lights hurt her sensitive silver eyes, and she hadn't been outside since her capture. But when she spoke, her voice was still calm and musical. Lisa, I need you to understand something very important, Kira said, leaning forward. The beings who want to destroy your world are called the Shadow Collective. They are not evil in the way you might think. They believe they are protecting the galaxy. Lisa frowned. How is wiping out entire civilizations protecting anything? They have seen what happens when young species develop advanced technology too quickly. Kira explained. Wars that destroy solar systems. Weapons that can tear apart space itself. They think it's better to end civilizations before they become dangerous. She paused and looked directly into Lisa's eyes. But they are wrong. Not all species become destructive. Some, like yours, have the potential to bring peace and knowledge to the galaxy? That's why my people sent me here. Lisa felt a chill. Tell me exactly what they're planning to do to Earth. Kira took a deep breath. 50 years ago, they sent tiny machines to your solar system. These machines are smaller than the smallest particles you know about. They traveled here hidden inside cosmic dust, so your scientists never detected them. What did these machines do? They burrowed into your sun's core and attached themselves to the nuclear fusion reactions. Kira continued. For decades, they've been slowly changing the magnetic field inside the star. Soon, they will cause a massive solar storm that will be far stronger than anything your planet has ever experienced. Lisa's hands started shaking. She had studied solar storms her entire career. A truly massive one could indeed destroy civilization. When will this happen? Based on the patterns I'm seeing in your sun's activity, we have about 15 months. Kira said, the storm will last for 3 days. During that time, every satellite in space will be destroyed. All power grids will fail permanently. Your electronic devices will stop working forever. She looked out the small window at the desert. Beyond, without electricity, your cities cannot function. Food cannot be distributed. Hospitals cannot operate. Within weeks, most of your population will be gone, and the few survivors will be scattered and helpless. Lisa felt sick to her stomach. Can these machines be stopped? Yes, but it requires technology your species doesn't possess yet, Kira replied. My people have developed a way to disrupt the quantum field that controls these devices. But the equipment needed is complex, and time is running short. That afternoon, Lisa tried to convince the government officials about the threat. She presented all of Kira's predictions about solar activity, showing how each one had come true perfectly. She explained the science behind solar storms and how they could indeed destroy modern civilization. But the officials weren't convinced. Dr. Robert Hayes, the lead scientist on the project, shook his head dismissively. This is impossible, he said. We've been monitoring the sun for decades. Our satellites would have detected any foreign objects or unusual activity. The machines are quantum level, Lisa protested. They operate in dimensions we can barely understand. Our current instruments can't detect them. General Patricia Wong, the military commander overseeing Kira's containment, crossed her arms. Even if we believe this story, how do we know this girl isn't part of some elaborate deception? Maybe these aliens sent her here to make us panic and destroy ourselves. Lisa felt frustrated. Look at her predictions, everything she said about the sun has been accurate. Coincidence? Dr. Hayes replied. Solar activity follows patterns. Anyone with advanced knowledge of astronomy might be able to make lucky guesses. Over the following days, Lisa watched in horror as more of Kira's predictions came true. Solar flares increased in frequency and intensity, following patterns that seemed almost organized. Satellite communications began experiencing strange disruptions. The northern lights appeared farther south than they had in decades. But every time Lisa brought these observations to the authorities, they found alternative explanations. Solar maximum cycles, atmospheric anomalies, natural variations in magnetic field activity. Lisa realized that even when faced with evidence, people would believe comfortable lies rather than terrifying truths. Meanwhile, Kira's condition began to worsen. The alien girl was clearly not adapted for Earth's environment. She rarely ate the food they brought her, and her skin grew paler each day. When Lisa asked about her health, Kira admitted she was slowly dying. My body chemistry is different from yours, she explained weakly. I need certain minerals that don't exist naturally. On your world, the journey here used up most of my body's reserves. How long do you have? Lisa asked, alarmed. Perhaps 6 months, maybe less. Kira replied, but that doesn't matter. What matters is saving your people. Even if I die here, the mission will be worth it if humanity survives. Lisa felt tears in her eyes. This brave girl had traveled across the galaxy, knowing she might die, just to warn a species she had never met, yet the very people she was trying to save refused to listen. That night, Lisa couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Kira's warning and the increasing solar activity. She decided to do her own research, using the radio telescope array remotely from her hotel room. What she found made her blood run cold. Hidden within the sun's magnetic field patterns were tiny irregularities that shouldn't exist. Naturally, they were so small and complex that conventional instruments missed them completely. But when Lisa applied the quantum detection methods Kira had described, the artificial structures became visible. The machines were real. They were already there, waiting in the sun's core like a time bomb ready to explode. Lisa tried to publish her findings, but scientific journals rejected her papers without review. When she shared her data with colleagues, they dismissed it as measurement errors or wishful thinking. Her reputation in the scientific community began to crumble as word spread that she believed in alien warnings. Dr. Hayes called her into his office and gave her an ultimatum: stop supporting Kira's claims, or lose her security clearance and her job. Lisa, you're a brilliant scientist, he said with false sympathy, but you're letting this alien girl manipulate you. These fantasies about solar weapons and galactic conspiracies are damaging your career and your credibility. Lisa looked him straight in the eye. What if she's telling the truth? What if we're ignoring a warning that could save billions of lives? Then we'll deal with that if it happens, Hayes replied coldly. But right now, you need to focus on reality, not science fiction. That evening, Lisa made a decision that would change everything. She couldn't convince the authorities through official channels, but maybe she could find another way. She began secretly documenting everything Kira had told her, recording their conversations whenever possible. She also started building her own quantum detection equipment, using designs Kira had shared with her. If the government wouldn't listen, maybe the world's independent scientists would. But as she worked in secret, Lisa began to notice something disturbing. Other researchers who had shown interest in unusual solar activity were suddenly losing their funding, being transferred to different projects, or facing mysterious career setbacks. It was almost as if someone was deliberately suppressing any investigation into the sun's artificial manipulation. Lisa realized that either there was a massive conspiracy to hide the truth, or the Shadow Collective had agents working within Earth's own institutions, making sure that Kira's warning would never be believed. The clock was ticking, and she was running out of people she could trust. 6 months had passed since Kira's arrival, and Dr. Lisa Martinez felt like she was living in a nightmare every day. The evidence grew stronger that the alien girl was telling the truth. The sun's behavior was becoming increasingly erratic, following patterns that were clearly artificial. But instead of investigating these anomalies, the scientific community seemed determined to ignore them completely. Lisa sat in her small apartment, surrounded by homemade equipment and printed research papers. She had been fired from the government facility 3 weeks ago, officially for conduct unbecoming a federal employee. In reality, she knew it was because she refused to stop believing Kira. The alien girl was now being held in a psychiatric hospital, diagnosed with elaborate delusional disorder by doctors who had never met an extraterrestrial being before. They were treating her with human medications that were slowly poisoning her already weakening system. Lisa had managed to visit Kira once, sneaking in by pretending to be a volunteer counselor. The girl she found was barely recognizable. Her silver eyes had grown dim, and her pale skin looked almost transparent, but her mind was still sharp. "They're moving faster than I expected," Kira whispered during their brief meeting. "The quantum resonance in your sun has increased by 30% in the last month. The timeline has shortened. How much time do we have?" Lisa asked quietly, glancing at the security cameras. 8 months, maybe less, Kira replied. "Lisa, you have to find a way to warn people. My ship's technology is still hidden in the mountains where I landed. If you can reach it, there are communication devices that might help." Before Lisa could ask more questions, hospital security arrived and escorted her out. She was banned from returning, and Kira was moved to a more secure wing where no visitors were allowed. Desperate for allies, Lisa began reaching out to astronomers and physicists around the world. She shared her data about the sun's artificial behavior, hoping someone would take her seriously. The response was deeply troubling. Dr. Chen Wei, respected solar physicist in Beijing, had been studying similar anomalies in the sun's magnetic field. When Lisa contacted him, he was excited to find someone else who had noticed the patterns. They exchanged data and theories for 2 weeks. Then suddenly, Dr. Chen stopped responding to her messages. When Lisa finally managed to call his research institute, she was told he had been reassigned to a classified project and could no longer discuss solar research with outside contacts. The same thing happened with Dr. Anna Volkov in Moscow, Professor James Peterson in London, and Dr. Maria Santos in Brazil. Every scientist who showed interest in the sun's unusual behavior either disappeared from public research or suddenly claimed their previous observations had been measurement errors. Lisa realized someone was systematically silencing anyone who got too close to the truth. She decided to investigate on her own. Using public records and news databases, she began tracing other incidents of people claiming to have alien encounters or warnings about space-based threats. What she found was terrifying. Throughout history, there have been dozens of cases of individuals claiming extraterrestrial contact. Always before major catastrophes, in 1908, a woman in Russia had written letters to government officials warning about sky fire from distant worlds 2 weeks before the Tunguska explosion. In 1859, a man in England had told local newspapers that star people had warned him about a great storm from the sun, just days before the Carrington event nearly destroyed the telegraph networks. Every single one of these people had been dismissed as mentally ill or fraudulent. Their warnings had been ignored, and the disasters had been classified as natural events. Lisa began to suspect that Kira wasn't the first alien to try to warn humanity. Others had come before, sent by benevolent species who wanted to help Earth survive. But each time, their messengers had been discredited and their warnings suppressed. The pattern suggested that the Shadow Collective had been planning Earth's destruction for over a century, and they had agents working to ensure that any warnings would be ignored. This suspicion was confirmed when Lisa tried to access certain government databases about solar research. Her computer was immediately hacked, her files were corrupted, and she received anonymous phone calls warning her to stop her investigation. Someone was watching her very carefully, realizing that conventional methods wouldn't work. Lisa decided to take desperate action. She used her savings to buy camping equipment and supplies, then drove to the remote Colorado mountains where Kira had first landed. It took her 3 days of hiking through difficult terrain, but she finally found the clearing where the alien spacecraft had been discovered. The government had removed all obvious traces of the landing, but Lisa knew what to look for. Using a metal detector, she began searching the forest floor. After hours of careful scanning, she found what she was looking for: small pieces of alien technology that had been scattered during the ship's landing and overlooked by the cleanup teams. The fragments were made of materials that didn't exist on Earth. They were incredibly light but stronger than any human metal, and they seemed to generate their own faint energy field. Lisa carefully collected every piece she could find, knowing that these artifacts might be humanity's only hope of surviving the coming disaster. Back in her apartment, she began studying the alien technology fragments. Using techniques Kira had taught her, she slowly learned to interface with the quantum systems embedded in the materials. The technology was far beyond human understanding, but gradually, Lisa began to decode its basic functions. One fragment appeared to be part of a communication device. Another seemed to be a sensor array capable of detecting the quantum machines in the sun. As she worked, Lisa noticed that her equipment was picking up increasingly disturbing readings from the solar direction. The artificial structures in the sun were becoming more active, building towards some kind of critical threshold. She tried once more to publish her findings, submitting papers to every scientific journal she could think of. But each submission was rejected within hours, often with form letters that suggested the editors hadn't even read her research. The mainstream scientific community had completely shut her out. But Lisa had one more idea. If she couldn't reach scientists through official channels, maybe she could reach the public directly. She began posting her research on social media platforms and independent science websites. The response was mixed, but some people were listening. Amateur astronomers started confirming her observations about unusual solar activity. Independent researchers began asking their own questions about the patterns she had identified. For the first time in months, Lisa felt a spark of hope. Maybe she could build a grassroots movement of citizen scientists who would help spread the warning. But her hope was short-lived. Within days, her social media accounts were suspended for spreading misinformation. The websites that had published her research received legal threats and took down her posts. Her internet service provider cut off her connection, claiming she had violated their terms of service. Someone with enormous power and influence was working very hard to keep her quiet. Lisa realized she was fighting not just ignorance and skepticism, but an organized effort to suppress the truth, whether it was a human conspiracy or alien infiltration. The forces working against her were far more powerful than she had imagined. With only months remaining before Kira's predicted catastrophe, Lisa faced an impossible choice: give up her hopeless fight and try to save herself, or continue risking everything to warn a world that refused to listen. As she sat in her darkened apartment, holding fragments of alien technology that represented humanity's only hope, Lisa made her decision. She would never stop fighting, even if it killed her. The question was whether one person could possibly be enough to save an entire planet. For months remained until Kira's predicted solar catastrophe, and Dr. Lisa Martinez was living like a fugitive in her own country. She had moved 3 times in the past month, always staying one step ahead of the government agents who seemed determined to stop her research. Her current hideout was an abandoned radio observatory in the desert mountains of Arizona. The facility had been shut down 5 years ago due to budget cuts, but the equipment still worked. More importantly, it was isolated enough that she could work without being detected. Lisa had spent weeks learning to use the alien technology fragments she had recovered. The process was incredibly difficult because the devices operated on principles that human science didn't understand yet, but gradually, she began to unlock their secrets. The communication fragment was the most important piece. By connecting it to the observatory's radio telescope, Lisa had managed to establish contact with other scientists around the world who were secretly investigating the solar anomalies. Dr. Yuki Tanaka in Japan was one of the few researchers who hadn't been silenced. Working from his private laboratory, he had been tracking the same quantum disturbances in the sun that Lisa had discovered. Together, they began to map the exact locations of the alien machines. The pattern is becoming clear, Dr. Tanaka told her during one of their encrypted conversations. The devices are arranged in a perfect geometric network throughout the sun's core. When activated simultaneously, they will create a resonance cascade that amplifies the star's natural fusion reactions. Lisa felt her stomach drop. How much amplification are we talking about? Based on the quantum signatures, the solar output will increase by approximately 3,000% for a period of 72 hours. He replied grimly, the electromagnetic pulse alone will destroy every electronic device on the planet. But that's not the worst part. What could be worse than that? The radiation burst will strip away Earth's protective magnetic field, Dr. Tanaka explained. Without that shield, the planet's atmosphere will begin bleeding into space. Even if some humans survive the initial catastrophe, the environment will become uninhabitable within months. Lisa closed her eyes, trying not to think about billions of people facing such a terrible fate. Kira said there was a way to stop the machines. Have you made any progress on that? I've been analyzing the technical data you shared from your alien friend, he said. The quantum disruptor technology is theoretically possible, but it requires materials that don't exist naturally on Earth. We would need exotic matter with properties that our current physics can barely describe. Lisa looked at the alien fragments scattered across her workbench. What if we already have some of those materials? Over the next few days, Lisa and Dr. Tanaka worked together to reverse engineer the alien technology. Using the observatory's equipment and guidance from their quantum physics knowledge, they slowly began to understand how Kira's people had created materials that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The breakthrough came when Lisa accidentally dropped one of the fragments into the telescope's electromagnetic field generator. Instead of being damaged, the fragment began resonating with energy patterns that matched the quantum signatures they had detected in the sun. "This is it," she told Dr. Tanaka excitedly during their next communication session. "The alien materials can disrupt the quantum field that controls the solar machines, but we need to amplify the effects somehow." Meanwhile, Lisa had been trying to reach Kira in the psychiatric hospital where she was being held. The alien girl's condition had deteriorated dramatically over the past months. According to the few reports Lisa could access, Kira was barely conscious most of the time, and her vital signs were failing. Lisa knew she had to act quickly. If Kira died before the solar weapon activated, humanity would lose its only source of information about how to stop the attack. Using skills she had learned from watching spy movies, Lisa created a fake identity as a medical researcher studying rare neurological conditions. She applied for permission to interview psychiatric patients for her research project. It took 2 weeks of paperwork and background checks, but eventually she was granted limited access to the hospital. When she finally saw Kira again, Lisa barely recognized her. The alien girl was lying in a hospital bed, connected to various monitoring machines. Her silver eyes had lost their sparkle, and her skin was so pale it looked almost transparent. But when she saw Lisa, she managed a weak smile. "I knew you would come," Kira whispered, her voice barely audible. "How much time is left?" 3 months, Lisa replied, holding Kira's hand gently. "I've been working with the technology fragments from your ship. We think we can build a quantum disruptor, but we need more information about how to use it." Kira closed her eyes and concentrated. When she opened them again, they briefly flashed with their old silver light. The disruptor must be activated at the exact moment the solar machines begin their final sequence. Too early or too late, and it won't work. How will we know when that moment arrives? The quantum resonance will spike dramatically about 6 hours before the main event, Kira explained. You will see massive increases in solar flare activity, and the sun's magnetic field will begin fluctuating in ways that your instruments can detect. She gripped Lisa's hand with surprising strength. "But Lisa, there's something else you need to know. Building the disruptor will require enormous amounts of energy, the kind of power that can only be generated by..." Before Kira could finish her sentence, hospital security arrived. Someone had been monitoring their conversation and realized that Lisa wasn't really a medical researcher. As security guards escorted her out of the building, Lisa heard Kira calling weakly from her room. "Remember the mountain where I landed?" "The answer is in the mountain." Lisa spent the next week trying to understand what Kira had meant. She returned to the Colorado mountains and searched the landing site again, this time looking for anything she might have missed. On her 3rd day of searching, she found it, a cave hidden behind a waterfall, marked with symbols that matched the patterns on Kira's spacecraft fragments. Inside the cave, Lisa discovered something incredible. Kira's ship hadn't been completely destroyed in the landing. The main hull was buried deep underground, but it was still intact and partially functional. Using the alien communication fragments as a key, Lisa managed to access the ship's computer systems. What she found there changed everything. The spacecraft contained detailed technical specifications for building a quantum disruptor, powerful enough to neutralize the solar machines. But the device required a massive power source, something equivalent to a nuclear reactor. Lisa realized why Kira had mentioned the mountain. The cave system extended deep underground, following natural geological formations that could channel and focus electromagnetic energy. If she could build the disruptor here, the mountain itself could serve as a natural amplifier for the quantum pulse. But she couldn't do it alone. The project would require specialized equipment, rare materials, and expertise in multiple scientific fields. Lisa made a decision that would determine the fate of humanity. She began reaching out to every independent scientist, amateur researcher, and conspiracy theorist who had shown interest in her work over the past months. Using encrypted communications and anonymous forums, she started building a secret network of people who believed in Kira's warning and wanted to help save the world. Dr. Tanaka in Japan agreed to help manufacture key components using his private laboratory. Professor Elena Rodriguez, a physicist in Mexico who had been investigating unusual electromagnetic phenomena, offered to provide theoretical support for the quantum calculations. A group of amateur radio operators in Australia volunteered to monitor solar activity and provide early warning when the final countdown began. Even some government employees began secretly helping. A NASA technician named David Park had been tracking the same solar anomalies that Lisa had discovered. When he learned about her project, he began feeding her classified data about solar monitoring satellite observations. As the network grew, Lisa felt a spark of hope for the first time in months. Maybe one person couldn't save the world alone, but a small group of dedicated individuals might be able to accomplish the impossible. With 2 months remaining until the predicted catastrophe, Lisa's secret team began the most important construction project in human history. They were building humanity's last hope, hidden in a cave beneath the Colorado mountains, racing against time to save a world that didn't even know it needed saving. The sun was behaving exactly as Kira had predicted, and Dr. Lisa Martinez knew that humanity had less than 48 hours left. Solar flares were erupting across the star's surface in patterns that were clearly artificial. The magnetic field fluctuations were so intense that radio communications around the world were becoming unreliable. Aurora displays were visible as far south as Mexico, painting the night sky in eerie green and purple lights, yet most people still didn't understand what was happening. News reports called it unusual solar weather and a rare but natural astronomical event. Scientists on television reassured the public that while some electronic devices might be affected, there was no cause for serious concern. Lisa wanted to scream at their ignorance, but she was too busy trying to save them all. Deep in the hidden cave beneath the Colorado mountains, her secret team was making final preparations for humanity's last desperate gamble. The quantum disruptor was complete, a strange combination of alien technology and human engineering that looked like something from a science fiction movie. Dr. Yuki Tanaka had flown in from Japan 2 days ago, bringing critical components that his laboratory had manufactured using Kira's technical specifications. Professor Elena Rodriguez was monitoring quantum field readings from her mobile laboratory parked outside the cave entrance. David Park, the NASA technician who had been secretly helping them, was providing real-time updates from government solar monitoring satellites through encrypted radio communications. Their network of amateur astronomers around the world was tracking the increasing solar activity. But the most important member of their team was also the weakest. Kira had somehow escaped from the psychiatric hospital 3 days earlier. Lisa never learned exactly how she had managed it, but she suspected that other government employees who believed in the alien warning had helped her break free. When Kira arrived at the cave, she was barely alive. Her alien physiology was failing in Earth's environment, and the stress of her escape had pushed her to the edge of death. But her mind was still clear, and her knowledge was essential for calibrating the quantum disruptor. The resonance frequency must be precisely matched to the quantum signature of the solar machines. Kira explained weakly as Lisa helped her operate the alien control systems. Even a small error will cause the disruptor pulse to scatter harmlessly. Through space, Lisa looked at the complex readings on their improvised control panel. How do we know we have the right frequency? When the solar machines begin their final activation sequence, they will emit a specific quantum pattern, Kira replied. You will know it when you see it because the pattern forms a mathematical sequence that appears in the structure of reality itself. She paused to catch her breath. My people discovered this sequence thousands of years ago. It appears in the formation of galaxies, the behavior of subatomic particles, and the growth patterns of living cells. When you see it in the solar readings, you will know that the moment has come. At 6:30 p.m. Mountain Time, their instruments detected the signature Kira had described. The quantum readings from the sun suddenly organized themselves into a perfect mathematical sequence that seemed to pulse with its own rhythm. "This is it," Dr. Tanaka announced from his monitoring station. "The solar machines are beginning their final countdown." Lisa felt her heart racing as she prepared to activate the disruptor. Everything they had worked for over the past months came down to this moment. If they had made any mistakes in their calculations or construction, billions of people would die within the next few hours. But before she could initiate the pulse sequence, alarms began sounding throughout the cave. Their security sensors were detecting helicopters approaching the mountain. Government forces. David Park reported grimly from his radio post. "Someone must have traced our communications or detected our energy signatures." Lisa looked at Kira, who was lying on a makeshift bed near the disruptor controls. The alien girl's silver eyes were dim, but she was still conscious. "How long do we need to keep the disruptor running?" Lisa asked urgently. "The pulse must be sustained for exactly 17 minutes and 43 seconds. Kira replied weakly. "That's how long it takes for the quantum disruption to propagate through the sun's core and neutralize all the machines." The sound of helicopters was getting louder. Lisa could see searchlights moving across the mountainside through the cave entrance. Dr. Tanaka looked up from his calculations. "If they cut our power or destroy the equipment before the sequence is complete, the solar machines will activate anyway. We need to buy time somehow." Professor Rodriguez stepped forward. "I'll go outside and try to delay them. I can claim this is a legitimate scientific experiment and demand to see warrants." David Park nodded. "I'll go with her. My NASA credentials might convince them to give us a few more minutes." As her colleagues left to face the approaching forces, Lisa began the activation sequence for the quantum disruptor. The alien technology hummed to life, creating a sound that seemed to resonate in dimensions beyond normal hearing. Energy readings spiked throughout the cave as the device began channeling power from the mountain's natural electromagnetic field. The quantum pulse built slowly, requiring precise timing to reach maximum effectiveness at exactly the right moment. Outside, Lisa could hear shouting as Professor Rodriguez and David Park tried to negotiate with the military forces. The voices were getting closer, and she knew they didn't have much time. Kira struggled to sit up, using the last of her strength to help monitor the disruptor's output. "The pulse is building correctly," she whispered. "But the solar machines are accelerating their sequence. They must have detected our interference." Lisa watched in horror as the readings from space showed the sun's activity increasing far beyond what Kira had originally predicted. The solar machines weren't just activating on schedule. They were overcharging themselves to overcome the quantum disruption. "What does this mean?" Lisa asked frantically. "It means the solar storm will be even more powerful than we expected." Kira replied, her voice barely audible. "The disruptor pulse needs to be stronger to compensate." Kira reached for the controls with shaking hands, adjusting the quantum resonance to match the accelerated machine sequence. But the effort was too much for her failing body. She collapsed backward, her breathing becoming shallow and irregular. "Kira!" Lisa cried, but the alien girl had lost consciousness. The cave entrance exploded with light as military forces breached their defenses. Soldiers poured into the chamber, weapons drawn, shouting commands for everyone to step away from the equipment. But Lisa couldn't stop now. The disruptor pulse was at 90% power and climbing. They needed just 8 more minutes to complete the sequence. "You don't understand." Lisa shouted at the soldiers. "If you stop this device, everyone on Earth will die." The commanding officer, a stern woman with colonel's insignia, stepped forward. "Dr. Martinez, you're under arrest for terrorist activities and endangering national security. Shut down this equipment immediately. Look at the solar readings." Lisa pleaded, pointing at their monitoring screens. "The sun is about to explode. This device is the only thing that can stop it." But the colonel wasn't listening. She gestured to her soldiers to begin dismantling the quantum disruptor. That's when something unexpected happened. David Park, who had been captured outside, suddenly broke free from his guards and ran toward the disruptor controls. "She's telling the truth," he yelled as he dove for the activation panel. "I've seen the classified satellite data. The sun is going to kill us all." In the chaos that followed, soldiers tried to stop David while Lisa fought to keep the disruptor running. Equipment sparked and alarms blared as the quantum pulse reached critical levels. And then, at exactly 7:47 p.m. Mountain Time, the pulse fired. A wave of quantum energy erupted from the mountain cave, traveling at faster than light speed toward the sun. The pulse was invisible to human eyes, but every piece of electronic equipment within 50 miles detected its passage as a brief surge of impossible energy for 17 minutes and 43 seconds. The quantum disruptor maintained its connection with the solar machines, systematically neutralizing each device in the network. The artificial structures that had been planted in the sun's core 50 years ago simply dissolved back into the quantum foam from which they had been created. As the sequence completed, the readings from space showed the sun's activity beginning to return to normal levels. The artificial acceleration stopped, the magnetic field fluctuations calmed, and the threat of planetary extinction faded away. Kira opened her silver eyes one last time and smiled weakly at Lisa. "It worked," she whispered. "Your people are safe." Then the brave alien girl who had traveled 369 light years to save a world that didn't believe her closed her eyes forever. In the aftermath, as government officials tried to understand what had happened and why their satellites were showing impossible energy readings from the mountain, Lisa was taken into custody and classified as a national security threat. But she didn't care about her own fate anymore. Humanity had survived its first encounter with galactic politics, and now they knew they weren't alone in the universe. Months later, when the government finally released her with all charges mysteriously dropped, Lisa